guys, I'm joined by the wonderful Nika, the solo laner from SSG. We're here to talk about Phase 2, Phase 1, and maybe a couple other things along the way. But first, I want to start off on Phase 2, since that's a little bit relevant right now. And now that sort of the midseason patch has settled relatively, what are some of the favorite changes that you've had from midseason?
I don't know. I feel like the game hasn't changed too much from my point of view, like in solo lane.
Yeah.
Um, Other than maybe having a few more aggressive options, like Soul Eater got buffed, Sledge,
Sure. Yeah.
Berserkers having Pen, like that opens up a lot more like damage opportunities, I'd say, in solo.
hmm
For the game overall, I'd say the Gold Fury changes are nice.
Yeah.
Just the camp changes in general, they like add something a bit extra that was like missing to the game before, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Something you have to worry about, like mid laners can't solo red, for example, stuff like that. So I think those are the main ones. And just itemization in general has changed a decent amount, like ADC builds as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think those are the main ones I like.
Sure. I was talking to Frost earlier, and he was wondering a lot about the Ama build that you've been going a lot, and you, I think, are basically one of the guys who's really been playing Ama at a very high level, at least in Phase 2 so far. Can you talk a little bit about this Ama build? Like, what do you like about it? And I'm thinking specifically like the Toxic Blade, Berserkers, Shoguns. I think like everyone's sort of experimenting with Sledge, so I don't know if that's something unique to you, but this sort of attack speed Ama is something that we don't really often see. But I think some of the other solo laners are kind of copying you too. Can you? Where did that come from?
I started doing this with the old Berserkers as well, the one with like the healing on it.
Sure.
I don't know why. Like the standard Amy build has always been just cooldown, and for some reason I was like, what if I just go Berserkers and like see if I can like win lanes or like be more aggressive early, and it did work out a lot, like really well. And like even with the item being changed, like it's really strong on her. Like when you finish Berserkers, you feel way stronger than like the old Berserkers because of the power, the penetration as well,
Yeah.
and just like the extra attack speed. I just think it's the most useful way to play the god. Like you can play like a hard dive, like carry mentality kind of. Like you get way more damage off than like with a cooldown utility build. It just like suits my playstyle, I think, mainly.
I've been talking to some of the other guys, and I know Slaney mentioned on our broadcast that he feels like Obey maybe plays a little bit better when Ducky has a bit more of that carry mentality. Is that something that you guys tend to look for sometimes? Is like having a bit more damage and carry potential coming through from the solo lane?
I think it just depends on how we're practicing, like leading up to a game. Like we could switch it up either way. Like if we think that like playing through me is better one week, then we'll do that. If it's through vote or through like the mid trio, like we're always flexible.
Sure.
I think that's what like a big strength of ours. Like we can, if we have to rely on one, like either side of the map to carry, like we can play off of that. So yeah, like I think Phase 2, I've had like a lot of opportunities to play the carry style.
Sure.
Like on Amy, for example, it's happened a lot. So, and Wukong as well. So yeah, I'm feeling good about it for sure. It's always fun when like the game's played around you, for example, and you have that opportunity to shine for sure.
Definitely. Do you feel like also like I'm sure it's like team comp dependent and maybe like draft dependent too as well, right? Like whether you focus the solo lane as well.
Yeah, it's like matchups, just everything in general.
Yeah,
like it can change like every game. Yeah.
Sure. Is that where do you think this flexibility comes from? Like, how are you guys so comfortable being able to like maybe like draw games out and like sit back and play some of these like really sort of old style EU games, as I like to call them,
Yeah.
And then there are other times where you feel like, you can just play pretty fast and loose and be aggressive and things like that. Is that like how do you cultivate that sort of like jack of all trades ability?
I think confidence is a big part of it, and obviously like being proactive, but knowing how to react as well. Like we've had a lot of games where something goes wrong early game, and we just have to be confident and say, okay, if we stall this game out, then we know we can win late game. Like we always have that mentality.
Sure.
And then there's other games where it's like, oh, this thing went well early. Okay, let's just like play through that strength that we have this game and like push a lead. Like we're just like confident that we can pull off like what we need to, pretty much.
Sure. I want to talk maybe a little bit more about the solo lane builds because, like you said, a lot of things have changed, and I'm especially curious about like there seemed to be a lot of sustain that was removed from the
Yeah,
sort of standard solo lane build, but it hasn't really, I guess, affected the solo lane meta too much.
yeah, not too overall.
Why do you think that is? Was that just like a cherry on the top before? Maybe there were some bloated
Well,
items. Maybe glad
I
shield. I don't
think
know.
like the only issue with sustain was Arthur, right? Like he was the
Yeah,
one god
yeah,
that Arthur and like Osiris, let's say.
sure.
That those two gods abused Glad's like the best out of
Hmm.
everyone.
Hmm.
And then Amy with Berserk is like kind of as well, but not near like the other two.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was
and
mostly
like
having Arthur in mind. So
yeah, yeah. Like now like every god doesn't have sustain, and like the lane's a lot less volatile, I think. Like there's a lot more like even matchups, whereas before it would just be super one-sided lanes where one
hmm.
guy's just trying to hope that he doesn't get like farmed by by an Arthur or Osiris. But
Hmm.
I think like I didn't like the Glad Shield removal at first, but as we've like gone along, I like the other options that have been added, like Soul Eater, for example. I think that's a really cool item for sure.
Yeah. Is something like Soul Eater, that's probably not something that you can play on every solo laner. It's maybe like pick a
Yeah,
team.
I think it's really strong on gods like Wukong, for example.
Hmm.
Like he doesn't have any trouble like getting to people, and he's really hard to lock down. So
Sure.
he's fine with going this more aggressive build, for example. But
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
if you're playing like a real tank, like Osiris, Arthur, still like it might feel good to have the Soul Eater, but it kind of just like hinders you in the long run, I think.
Sure. Sure. I kind of want to get your take a little bit, maybe on Cabrakan. I think we've seen Final K play
Ooh.
him a couple times. I don't know. Is that asking for too much info here? What are your thoughts on the Cabrakan and
I've
solo
been
lane?
playing on stream and in ranked a lot. Like
Yeah.
I think he's a really strong character, but the only reason like I think people aren't experimenting with him too much is like he's had a lot of bugs with his three,
Oh,
and
really?
it yeah, and it can get pretty frustrating. Like it would like cancel by itself sometimes, but I think it's pretty much all fixed now. So
Oh, yeah. I think I did
maybe
see.
we'll see people. Yeah,
I saw some Final K clips of it just not
yeah,
working for
yeah.
him. Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, I think he's a really strong god. Like doesn't have the strongest matchups in lane, but
Hmm.
you can get through pretty much anything right now. And I think he's a really strong god, like in team fights overall.
Hmm.
Really good
Hmm.
dive potential and high damage. So maybe
Yeah.
we'll see some more of him as
Sure.
the
Sure.
season goes on.
You mentioned like dive potential. I think a lot of people have basically said this is a dive meta now, where it's really imperative that people are attacking the backliners. Is that how
Yeah.
you see it as well? That it's basically a dive meta right now?
I don't know if it's a full dive meta, but you
Hmm.
always need backline threat. Like you never want like the ADC and mid laner free casting. You want someone distracting them or like forcing them out of fights. Otherwise, they'll dive you, and you'll have no one to like stop their carry damage, which is like
Sure.
the main source of damage. Like every time,
Yeah. Why do you think it hasn't divulged maybe into that full dive meta? Is there something that's preventing that from happening? Because it feels like a lot of the gods that we're seeing, especially in the solo lane, like the Cthulhu's and even your
Yeah.
Amy's, are like these are like kind of aggressive diving removers.
Um,
I feel like.
I f- I feel like teams also want to peel off gods like that. Right? Like Cthulhu,
Hmm.
we've seen him like if he gets to free cast, he'll carry a fight. But then if you draft him more like blow this guy up as soon as he
Sure.
ults, like he's
Sure.
just useless, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's like a good balance between teams wanting to dive and full commit, but then other teams being like, okay, we can only have one person diving, and the
Hmm.
rest of the team just holding back and taking care of their front line and
Hmm.
just like taking small trades. But I don't know. I feel like also like Umoja being a top support, right? Like that.
Hmm.
She's not bad at diving, right? But it's just better if she's like dealing with frontliners and peeling, right? I
Yep.
think. And then like Hebo Jungle, we've seen as well. He's really good at just dealing with frontline. So I
Hmm.
think just picks as well come into play there.
Do you think there is a like a play style also about it, or do you think most teams have sort of um, adapted to doing some of this diving in their team comps? Because I know, there was a lot of talk in previous seasons about like maybe like tank killing comps that some teams
Yeah.
preferred, but that doesn't seem maybe as effective right now. Is that something that you're noticing with all the teams, or
Mm,
do you think there are some teams that still prefer the tank killing playstyle?
I mean, like we still draft a lot of tank killing.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most. I think we always have pretty high CC comps, but I think you'll notice like every team still has their own style. Like some
Sure.
teams do just play a full dive comp,
Mm.
and it's really successful for them. But yeah, I think there's always gonna be variety in like how each team plays, like based on their comps and just like how the players want to play the game. Like not everyone wants to just like smoke and be like a dive
Mm-hmm.
team, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Some people
Yeah.
want to take like more strategic approach for sure.
Basically, what you're saying is not everyone is Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ghost are like a really good example of like a team that just like doesn't give you any room to breathe. Like they
Mm-hmm.
just keep running at you and like forcing you into like decisions that you aren't really ready to make for
Sure.
sure.
Sure. I have a couple more, maybe sort of like playstyle questions. Frost has been talking a lot on my show about how you guys play sort of a meta adjacent style where you understand the
Mm,
meta, but you sort of play your own picks and comps that maybe give you guys specifically an advantage against what is sort of the meta
yeah.
picks. Do you guys see, is that something that you feel is true when he says something like
Um.
that?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, we even last year on Renegades, it was pretty similar. Like if a meta pick came up,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say we weren't too interested in playing it, we'd always make sure we have something to deal with it. Like Cthulhu's like usually banned a lot, but we've played against it. I think 8 out of our last 10 SPL games
Mm-hmm.
because we just don't really see the god as that big of a threat.
Sure.
Like we can like draft around it, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where Frost's point comes from for sure. Like we always think, sure, gods are strong, but there's gods just as strong that do well into them. So it's always good to have like an answer to the meta for sure.
Do you favor playing those counter picks, or do you like playing the meta picks? I don't know. It's sort of like a personal question,
Um,
just how you feel.
personally, I'll just play whatever I think is strongest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Amy is the top solo laner, so if it's open, I'll pick it, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But let's say there's an opportunity for me to like let's say Amy's banned. It's been banned pretty much every game against us recently.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can hold on and like play Achilles into Cthulhu, which is what we did recently.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it just depends on the situation for sure. But I just prefer picking what I think is strongest because I usually pick like top three instead of the bottom two because I feel like in solo lane you can just pick like a strong god and always be fine.
Is that sort of just like a whole team mentality about it, like to find picks that will counter the quote unquote, maybe not even counter, but like play well into the meta picks? Is that just like a team
It just
wide thing, or
depends how
does
we
it like come from someone
depends how we
specifically?
feel about like the god that's
Mm-hmm.
meta. Like
Okay.
I think it's pretty well known that like for example we don't really play Persephone that much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like Dada doesn't really he just doesn't like the god and that
Sure.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for us it's like if we ever want to play against the god we'll have to find counters, right? So
Right. Right.
it just depends on the god that's like top pick right now.
Mm. Okay.
Sometimes maybe we'll love that top pick and we'll play it as well, but like sometimes it might just not be the right pick for our team.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I know that now basically you've played every team once. Are there teams that you guys particularly, get up and go for? Like, like these are games that you like maybe circle on the calendar ahead of time. Are there teams that get you going like that? And,
Yeah,
and,
for us
what, and who
for
are
us it would
those?
be it would be just like Ghost, Radiance, and Sanguine. Like the
Mm-hmm.
like we're kind of seen as this top four, right? So we always want to make sure like we do well against those teams, and like it's just like a good test for us as well. Like sure, like there's still so long left before Worlds, but it's always good to
Mm-hmm.
have like a an indication of how well you can do against like the teams you could potentially play against in those like later rounds. I think
Mm-hmm.
those are the teams we like focus on the most, I'd say,
Sure.
in the online games.
Yeah. I also noticed that like this has been a longer phase. How have you guys been dealing with it? I asked earlier on a couple of the players like if they feel like they would get burnt out with this phase and things like that. But now we're like almost like a third of the way through, and I
Yeah,
guess like this is sort of where the burnout maybe starts to settle in a little bit sometimes. How are you guys
yeah,
been
for
dealing with it?
sure.
Um,
Um, I don't know. I feel like we're just like taking every day like one step at a time. Like it, we're not like double scrimming every day. I don't
mhm,
know if any team is right now personally,
mhm,
but
mhm.
we're just like scrimming like a normal amount. We're just trying to not get burnt out. Like personally, I'm kind of feeling some burnout recently because I'm also streaming a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe I'll slow it down a bit or something because the worst thing is like being burnt out right before a tournament for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you never want that.
Yeah. Of course.
So I think every team is just going to be like reasonable with their scrim times probably, and just like how much time they put into the game. But you also want to make sure you're keeping up and like not taking the foot off the gas too much for sure.
Are there teams that you are maybe concerned that they might get burnt out? I mean, like that's obviously something that you don't want to happen to anyone, right? I imagine you want to be playing the best that
I'm
everyone
not
has
sure.
to
I
give.
think I don't know. No team really stands out for that one. I feel like every team is fine right now. Like we haven't played that much still.
Sure.
Like I think the main like burnout period will probably be like for the third part of the phase. Like when we play the teams the third time, that's when people might just get like bored, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause it's and you might want to slow it down so you don't get burnt out for the Worlds because I think it's
Sure.
only like a month break or something.
Sure. Sure. Did you guys give any thought to, and maybe you can point out if you did this? I haven't looked at your games close enough, but did you give any thought to maybe using this early part of the phase to letting picks through in at the SPL environment, just to maybe experiment with counter picks or uh, figure out how to play against some of these picks in maybe higher stakes environments than just scrims?
We've been doing that with like Freya is like a pick that's seen as like really hard to deal with,
Sure.
and
Sure.
I think we have a pretty good win percentage against it. I think we've won 3, lost 1, something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but
Okay.
I've like it's definitely important to like scrims compared to SPL is like way different. Like if something goes well in scrims, you can't be like 100% certain it's going to go well in SPL. So
Right. Right.
it's definitely good to like test out how you can deal with like the top picks in a real game.
Yeah.
Like with Cthulhu Freya, we've done that a lot, and it's gone well most of the time.
Sure. Speaking about like the difference between scrims and SPL, I hear a lot of players say that they're so different. Can you maybe name something specific that stands out to you as being very different between scrims and the SPL, just to maybe give some more context to fans and stuff?
I think it's just hard to give 100% in scrims. Like if something goes really wrong in an SPL game, you have no choice but to deal with it.
Right.
And like try and like make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
But in a scrim, I think a lot of people like I'm guilty of it as well. Like you'll kind of just like start to give up a bit because it's like, oh, I mean, it's just a scrim, you know. Like I think a lot of people have that mentality sometimes, not all the time, but there's like a chance it happens. So I think that's the main difference. Like in SPL, no one's gonna give up. Like you could be 10k down. Like we've had games where like 10k down, we're trying super hard. But if that happens in a scrim, it's like everyone's gonna be like not really trying to win. You're just gonna be like, okay, we'll just try better in the next scrim. We're like, well, get this game over with, you know. I think that's the main difference.
Okay. We've been talking with Slaney a little bit since he was a guest analyst for us this week, and he was talking a little bit about how his team is in maybe a bit of a slump after losing to Sanguine and Radiance the past couple weeks here in the SPL. And I just wanted to maybe get your take on slumps and things like that. Do you think they're inevitable? I mean, have you experienced slumps as a team in your career? Like, how do you think teams can get out of slumps, and how is it to go through them in your history?
So we went through the slump like literally start of phase 1. Like we won week 1 against Renegades, and I think we lost 3 or 4 sets in a row. We had a really rough start, but we like the way we dealt with it is we limited our picks. We only picked like 2 or 3 gods every scrim, so that the drafts weren't the issue, and we could just focus on, okay, today we'll fix early game problems, and then next day, okay, we'll focus on gold furies and then FGs, and then eventually ending the game. Because the worst thing you can do is like you're going through a slump and you're just trying anything to make it work, you know, like getting desperate with picks, I think.
Sure.
Because then it just distracts you from like why you're losing. Like if you can focus in on like specific reasons why you're losing, because your comps are not a problem, like it's way easier to get out of a slump. But I don't think slumps are necessarily like a terrible thing. Like it helped us learn a lot as a team and progress quicker than we maybe would have if we didn't have a slump.
Sure. Is there someone on the team that maybe like takes charge in terms of like focusing the team on like, all right, this scrim we're going to do this? Because if I recall, early on in phase one, you guys didn't have like a coach or anything.
Yeah, Josh came in like a few weeks into the phase, like properly.
Yeah. So was this slump before Josh came in, and was Josh a part of maybe like focusing you guys up, or like who took charge?
Yeah, like Cherry does it a lot as well. Like for scrims, like he'll try and set the plan. Like, but like all of us are like responsible as well. Like it can never all be on one person. It's just like Cherry or Josh will give us like a basic outline of like what we should look to do, and then it's like up to all of us to like chime in and do our part.
Yeah, and I'm sure you all each have like individual things that you're looking to improve on in all of these sort of phases of the game as well, right? So, they're sort of like your own goals and checklists that you go through as well. Another thing, last thing about sort of phase two, since we basically played everyone, is there maybe a player or a team or like who's your most improved? Because I think we've seen maybe a lot of these bottom end teams, even though maybe it's not reflected in the standings. I feel like the gameplay has improved quite a bit over these first 5 weeks. So I just wanted to maybe get your thoughts on the improvement we've seen out of especially Obey and United and Renegades.
I don't know about most improved individually. That's a hard one.
Well, I gave you some options because I knew that was a hard one. So
I mean, like I think, for example, like Votes played well in the phase one as well, but I think he's been like by far the best ADC in phase two. Like he's been hard carrying like a lot.
Sure,
so I think he's like a big improvement. I think he had a slump and he did a good job of like recovering from that.
Sure.
Like not taking it too much to heart, which is good. I think on Obey as well, Inbound and Wowie, they got like a lot of hate, I think, phase one. But I think they've both played a lot better phase two and have shown like a lot of strengths in their games for sure. And Obey are like improving as a team a lot as well.
Yeah.
And I think Guy J's also done a good job of like transitioning into the league. And I mean, joining a team that's already down and like still losing when it is hard for them, I think, to like do well right now. And I think recently they've done a really good job of like taking games of us and Radiance and like nearly winning those sets as well. Like
sure.
I think United as a whole, you could say, like stepping up a lot recently as well.
Yeah, I know some of our analysts have said that Snoopy has improved a lot in the support role over the
it's true as well. Yeah.
Do you feel that way as well? Yeah.
Well, the thing with Snoopy is like he's played support a lot in ranked as well. Like even when he was an ADC and like.
Sure. Well, you can't get the bar as an ADC at Rick. We all know
I
that,
mean,
right?
like his like support mechanics and stuff would never be the issue. It's just like it's always going to take time to like make the mistakes, like getting picked, like being out of position, not understanding how tanky you are and stuff. Like it's always going to take some time, but I think he's done a good job of like speeding up the process when his team needs it.
Do you find that there's like, I don't know if it's like muscle memory, but like for like your tankiness or like how much health you're going to be taking from damage from different abilities and things like that, does that become instinctual at some point?
Yeah, definitely. Like you just get used to it. Like when you play like the same role for a long time, even carries will know exactly how much damage they could do. Or like, they'll look at a tank's build and they'll know, I can kill this guy really easily if we just CC him. They always call that out.
Sure.
But for tanks, it's definitely the same. It's like, especially in solo, like you really need to know like when you can punish someone else, go for a solo kill, or when you could be in trouble and like might need to call for help. Like you always need to stay aware of that, and just like with years of experience, like eventually it's just second nature for sure.
Sure. Let's maybe switch to talking about phase one and the playoffs a little bit. I know obviously it didn't go exactly as you guys were expecting. I'm sure you guys expected to win.
Yeah.
But can you maybe talk a little bit about Radiance and what maybe you struggled with and what they brought that you weren't expecting?
We played against Ghost.
Oh, that's right. My bad. Okay. Oh, because Ghost was afraid of Sanguine. That's what Aurora said, right? That's why Sanguine chose them. something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My bad. Okay, let's start over.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the same question, obviously, but about
Yeah.
Ghost. I don't know. I don't know. They didn't really bring out anything surprising. I'll ask a different question. But I don't know. How do you feel about the Ghost set and maybe yeah? What was let's start this whole thing over. Let's make a
Sure.
nice clean cut for the editor. I want to start over again. I'm sorry, man.
That's fine.
All right, moving on to Phase 1 and the Phase 1 playoffs. Can you talk a little bit about your set with Ghost and maybe the things that Ghost did that um, gave them a better chance to win than you guys?
Well, I think the main problem in the Ghost set for us was I think we did a good job of like getting pressure that we needed around the map
Mm-hmm.
and to play through. Like we had solo pressure pretty much every game.
Mm-hmm.
But then we would make like really bad mistakes off of an invade, and Ghost did like a really good job of punishing it and like reacting to it.
Mm.
Like that's the main difference I think between like why they won and we lost. Like they like took the pressure well. Like they'd always have like a weak matchup in solo, and they'd like be able to like work around it really well. Like they'd send Twig over for a team fight, and
Sure.
like he would do a lot of work, and then eventually we would just get like really complacent, I think, and like
Mm.
force bad invades and get punished off of it by them. I think they did a really good job of doing that to us for sure.
Okay. What do you think about the sort of choosing option that Sanguine had here? Is that something that maybe you like or don't like? What do you think of it?
Um, I think it's interesting. I think it could be good. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't really have any problems with it. Either way, like you have to be good enough to beat any team. I think
Sure.
so.
Sure.
It's not like that big of a deal,
Yeah.
but I think it. I think it's good for viewers because it like can create storylines potentially. You know, of
Mm.
like, oh, this team has a bad matchup into this team, so that's why they didn't pick him, and
Mm.
then like throughout the tournament could give like a good plot line to like certain matches for the casters and viewers to
Sure. Sure.
look at.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the choosing dynamic, I mean, Sanguine was the one who got to choose. I sort of asked some of the other players this. Did you feel that Sanguine would be the first seed at the start of the season? Is that something that you guys knew? I knew Aurora said that he thought Sanguine was going to do very well, but I think a lot of
Yeah.
fans maybe expected them to struggle, especially them sort of being in the SML all year last year and not really doing too much at Worlds.
Well, after scrimming them, like you could tell that they had like a lot of passion and they really wanted to do well,
Mm,
and they were like doing really well in scrims against us, and I'm sure against every team.
mm,
So I definitely wasn't surprised that they came first. Like I thought they would finish like top 3, top 4,
mm.
guaranteed. Um, I don't know. I think they deserved it as well. Like they played really well throughout the whole split for sure.
Sure, sure. All right. I just had maybe a couple questions about your Smite career in general, and then we'll be done here, I guess. Do you feel like you've had any mentors in the SPL? I don't know exactly how long you were really in the SPL and things like that. Was Sanguine in the SPL when you were on it?
Season 3 was my first SPL. I was
Sure.
with Leftovers, and then that team became Sanguine.
Okay, right, right. Like who've been mentors for you, at least in your SPL career throughout the years? Are there any ones that maybe stick out to you?
Well, in season 3, like at the start, like my first like real team was that Leftovers team.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot off of Badger, who was the captain of the team.
Sure, yeah.
Just about like how to play in comp and like how to communicate, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was the first like real mentor, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And then just throughout the years, like me and Cherry have teamed a lot. Like we've teamed for 4 years, and every year, like he's like always like teaching me things still. Like even
Sure,
now,
sure.
and like throughout the years, like season 3, 5, 6, 7, like he's always been kind of like a leader figure. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always learned lot off of him. And then just in general, I've always learned stuff off of other people, other players in solo, but not like mentor level, I'd say. Like Variety and Deathwalker. Like they're two players like I scrimmed a lot against throughout the years and just played against, and
Yeah.
probably the two players I've learned the most from, and like
Sure.
taken a lot from their playstyles, and like put into my own game.
Well, now that you bring that up, what would you say are some of the things that you've taken from players like Deathwalker and Variety? What are those? Are there anything specific that you'd like to mention or anything?
I think it's just overall play, like how to play matchups and laning phases, and like knowing when to make impactful rotations, and like just like different, just loads of different things. Just general play, really.
Sure.
Like when I was like new, like in season 3, like Variety was like already seen as like the top player. Like, oh, he was like seen as a good player, and then he had like that like crazy Worlds finals,
Right.
and that whole Worlds run.
Yep.
And obviously, like getting to play against him a lot and scrim against him, like when a player is like at that high of a level, like you'll always learn like small things and just like different interactions like in a lane, and I think those are the main things. Yeah.
Sure. Speaking of people helping, I know we maybe touched on Joshi a little bit early on, but what are some of the things that Joshi can do to help your team? I know he's like not in the team house with you guys and things like that.
Yeah.
How has he been helping you guys so far this season?
Well, he's done like a lot of prep for like all our matches, and like for example, he lays out like all the different picks other teams have been playing, and like their like ban like strategies, and he just like prepares us for game day really well. Like make sure that we do drafts and like have reactions to like what if this team does this. Like we're always ready like for drafts on game day, which is I think the most important thing a coach can do.
Sure.
And then in scrims, like if we ever need any like insight, or like if he spots anything that we need to fix, like he always points it out as well.
Sure. All right. Well, I think I'm basically all out of questions here. I want to just give you a huge thanks and all my appreciation for coming on here and
No problem. It was fun.
the time. I just want to give you a couple seconds here to shout out whoever you want to. And as tradition is here, if there's anyone you want to stir some beef with, be sure to
No,
name
no
names,
beef.
okay?
No beef. But just shouts to you for the content and like everyone involved in it. I think it's really good for the Smite scene for sure. And just shouts to my team in SSG. Like really helpful org, like the best org I've been with by far. Made everything so easy for us this year, and just appreciate them a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, man.
All right, thanks, man.